Okay, what is the question of the day? I'm Professor Q, so glad to be with you. Question, I have Mr. Narwhal. My question to you is, what is on Mr. Narwhal's head? And what is it used for? At this time, please write your thoughts down in your journal. So, what do you think is on top of its head? If you said it's a tooth, you're right! Isn't that wild? And sometimes this tooth can grow up to 9 feet tall. How tall is that? Maybe a little bit taller than your ceiling in your house or in the classroom. Isn't that amazing? And this tooth is actually the canine tooth. Do we have any canine teeth? Yes, we do, right on top. But thank goodness they're not 9 feet long. Okay, so what are we discussing? Well, this is actually an adaptation, a physical adaptation. And so today's topic of instruction is about adaptations. And there are different types of adaptations that we are going to discuss. As you see, I have my friends here with me of all different species. And we're going to discuss a few of them and how well they survive and adapt in their environment. So first of all, though, students may think about organisms mainly as in the kingdom of Animalia. However, we can't forget about our plants and trees too. So I'd like to focus on this type of tree. Does anyone know what that's called? You're right. This looks like a Christmas tree. Well, that's because it is. And what is the name of Christmas trees? They're conifers. They're also called evergreens. And so the question is, how do these conifers adapt in their environment? Do you think that they exist in a cold burr environment or a hot desert environment? Normally you would see these trees in cold environments. So how does this type of organism, plant organism, adapt? Well, if you are able to observe that this particular type of conifer has short types of long needles. And these needles are waxy and it has a waxy cuticle. And because of that, they're able to shed off all the snow that may come its way a lot easier. Also, this conifer is able to produce and adapt so that way it could survive. And how does it produce seeds? Through the acorns as well. And so these are the seeds of the evergreen. So that way it continuously survives season after season. Well, you may say, well, Dr. Q, Professor Q, what type of adaptation is that? Well, let's take a look over here, shall we? There's 3 main types of adaptations. One is structure, another is behavior, and the third is physiological. Let's all say that. You ready? Physiological. So, having the tree, evergreen, to produce its seeds is a physiological adaptation. And let's talk about potentially all of those bright flowers, because now, looking at the season of spring and summer, we have a lot of different colorations. Well, those bright, beautiful flowers are actually adaptations. But why? And what do they do? Oh, well, they attract swarms of bees to be able to pollinate and reproduce. But do flowers only attract bees? No. What about hummingbirds? Do hummingbirds help to be able to transfer the pollen? You bet they do. Okay, so at this point, I'd like for you to please go ahead and write these 3 types of adaptations in your journal. Great. Okay, so what are the 3? It is structure, behavior, and physiological, SBP. One way to remember that. Alrighty, so now what I'd like for us to have a conversation about is this beautiful horse. How many of you lately have seen any horses in their environment within the Houston area? Well, there are quite a few different types of species of horse as well. But I'd like for you to try to identify what would be a structural adaptation of this beautiful horse. Go ahead and write that down, please. Well, let's talk about it. Well, I can tell you definitely one is their long body, which allows for a longer digestive tract than other animals. Well, why is that so important to have a longer digestive tract? Well, the question is, what do horses eat? You're right, they eat hay and vegetation, which can be a little bit rough on, well, at least our stomachs. But because of their digestive system, it helps them to be able to digest it very best as it needs to be. Also, what's another important point is if you could see, when you look at me, my eyes are located in the front of my face. But what about the eyes of a horse? See, that's right. Actually, the eyes are on the side of their skull. And what is so important about that? Better to see you with, my dear. And so that way, the horse can see any predators from either side that may be approaching. Additionally, even though my little model does not have teeth, they have great teeth to be able to chew that vegetation, and with their hoofs have actually sharp, so that way they could dig into the ground looking for some water if there's a drought. So there's a lot of wonderful structural adaptations. But you say, well, what is the behavior? Well, what is the behavior? Horses love to herd. They love to be social. And that is definitely a behavior. Also, when they are attacked, their behavior is to be able to stand up on their hind legs. And so, additionally, what is their physiological? Well, physiological is what that body does to help survive and reproduce. So the female horses will actually produce milk for its young. Isn't that wonderful to hear about horses? I just love them. One of my favorites type of species. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Well, let's talk about another type of species, shall we? Which is, I think, one of the smartest animals out there in this world. What could that be? What do you think? Which one of these would be one of the smartest animals, in my opinion, in the world? Did you see it? Can you point to it? You're right. I think it's the elephant. The elephant is a very giant but gentle creature here on Earth. And what is so identifiable with the elephant? What type of structure can we pinpoint immediately? That's correct. It's big flappy ears. Well, what's the purpose of those big ears? Do you know? Well, if you said potentially to help cool off the elephant because it lives in a humid environment, you're right. Also, is there another part of the elephant body that helps to be able to cool it off? The trunk. It can dip into the cool water and splurt that water all over the back of the elephant, cooling its skin to a normal temperature again. So the elephants are very, very smart to the point that actually, did you know that they have a complex communication system? Did you say? Yes, but what is it? Everyone, please put your hand on your throat and hum. You ready? Hum. And what did you feel? Did you feel vibration? Yes. Well, do you know that the elephant has a deep-throated type of communicative vibration that we cannot or other animals cannot understand or hear? But that's how they're able to talk to one another. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely. So elephants are very important species in this world. And what type of physiological adaptation do they have? Well, they also have females who have milk to be able to help feed their young, and they do roam in a herd. Isn't that great? I love these elephants too. Let's see. Oh, who should we talk about next? Who do you think? Well, there's one species that's here, not like the other. And that would be actually this little bird right here. Has anyone ever heard of the theory of evolution? And what does evolution mean? Well, if you have, evolution really is the evolving of species over time. Well, what makes them do that? It's their environment. So, Galapagos Islands. Ooh, have you heard of that before? Beautiful islands with different types of creatures that was visited by Darwin himself. And Darwin was able to write down notes of his observations of both plant and animal species. And he made keen observations over time, seeing how some of these islands were inhabited by birds called finch. And each island had different types of relatable finch, but the one big observational difference was its beak. One island had thick, large beaks, and another one had small, thin beaks. Well, why would we care, Professor Q? So why would we care about the types of beaks of the finch? Because it gives us evidence, scientific evidence, that evolution does occur in circumstances based on their environmental conditions. So, as you see, now we have a visitor, Twinkles. She's back. Absolutely. Say hi, Twinkles. Hello. So, she's here to be able to help us talk a little bit about adaptation. So let's talk about the structure of Twinkles, shall we? We're actually going to talk behind her back in front of her. Okay, so what can you find that would be a structural adaptation of Twinkles? Go ahead and write that down in your notebook, please. Can you find a cat among our little species here? Here she is, right here. So I had asked, what is a type of structural adaptation that Twinkles may have? So if you said the ears, how they're located, yes, to be able to fine-tune into the predator-prey relationship. If you said the long tail, well, what is a long tail for? To be able to help balance as they jump up or tiptoe along the fence. And what about the coloration? So, yes, the coloration is a camouflage, and camouflage is an adaptation that allows the species of cats to be able to hide and pounce when need to for their food every day. Well, thank you, Twinkles, for allowing us to work with you. So, but the other question is, what about their behavior? Well, cats, house cats that are, have funny little behaviors, different than that of the cats that are in the wild, of course. But their behavior is differentiated upon how and who they interact with. But they are still playful just as any. Because have you ever seen a cat pretend with a play mouse? Absolutely. They are pretending to practice their hunt. And as well as the physiological, so cats also feed their young with milk and other capacities to help produce and survive the species. So let's further move on with that of the dog. Well, if you have a pet dog, for example, or one is that of this little dog here, there are different types of species of dogs, but this particular species is very important because it is a hardy dog, a husky, that allows itself to be able to have a double thick fur. Ooh, wish we could have that sometimes in the winter, right? And how it is able to have high agility and endurance means that it just runs and runs and runs without burning or tapping into its caloric intake. Oh, I wish I had that opportunity, right? Yes, which means we could just keep running and running without anything else of that nature. Okay, but dogs are wonderful. Now, how do they communicate? How do they behave? Well, they love to be able to run in packs, and they do have a communication to be able to have, such as, ow! They love to howl, like their ancestors of the wolves. And their physiological is similar, of course, like that to the cats, where they provide young nourishment that's needed. Okay, wonderful. So, are there any other types of organisms here that we should talk about? What about the penguin? The penguin lives in, where's that? Antarctica, and the very cold. That's correct. So this penguin has very special capabilities. Not this one in particular, but you know what I mean. What do the penguins do? Well, it's their fur. Their feathers are waterproof. How cool is that? How would you like to be walking around being waterproof? How neat. We wouldn't have to have any more umbrellas, would we? Anyway, that's a different story as it is. But these penguins, though, are very social. The fact that they huddle. Well, why do they have to huddle? Because it's cold in Antarctica. Of course they have to huddle to keep warm. And they have very particular patterns to help them continue being warm and surviving the cold, harsh winters. Now, what do they do with their young? How do they keep their young safe? You're right. Well, both the male and the female will actually put the egg or the young on the feet, and they alternate and press their body to be able to keep the egg or young chick warm. How cool is that? Now, fact or fiction? Penguins, are they always in the cold? So, did you think that penguins are only in the cold weather? Because if you did, think again. Actually, there are penguins in Peru in the warm weather. And there's all different types of species of penguins to be able to observe. Interesting facts, isn't that? Well, let's talk about another historical perspective of Animalia, and that would be the dinosaur. That's right. What I'd like for you to do, please, at this time, is write down in your journal, dinosaur, and identify at least one structure, one behavior, and one physiological type of adaptation for the dinosaur. Oh my goodness, a zygodactyl just landed on my head. What am I to do? What am I to do? Twinkles, what am I to do? I better watch out because she might try to get it. Called predator prey. So, did you find out? Did you think about what are at least one type of structure, behavior, and physiological adaptations for the dinosaur? Well, let's have a quick review, shall we? What's the structure of the dinosaur? Well, it depends on the type of species, but if it's a T-Rex, rawr, well, we got those big teeth, right? But then we get those little hands. We can't do anything about it, can we? but it definitely is bigger than all of them. So, what were we thinking, correct? So then what was the behavior? Well, the behavior is depending on the species, but they do like to herd, absolutely, as well. And they hunt all in different forms and fashions. And of course, they're physiological. Well, of course, with this particular area, the physiological would be that they do what? Well, dinosaurs historically are those of more of the relatable to lizards, of course, and the fact that they have thermoregulation, which means that their body is sensitive to the environmental condition of the weather. So, what a historical concept is that, right? Absolutely. So, well, from that, let's talk about this zygodactyl on my head. Woo! Well, what is a zygodactyl? Well, it's not historically speaking a dinosaur in that sense. However, zygodactyl is representation of the claws of a parrot, where that way there are 2 claws in the front and 2 in the back. That's how that adaptation is able to hold on various types of objects. Isn't that neat? Well, what's another type of structure? Well, let's see. I wish I could see. Hello. What about its beak? Does it have a curved beak? What about its feathers? Its plumage? It's very colorful and bright to be able to attract others. Now, talking about the behavior of parrots is that they love to be able to flock together and be able to be in many species together of that same species because there's greatness in numbers, and that is also protecting against any predators that may be coming around. Additionally, they have their own particular parrot communication, their calls, that's very distinctive. And their physiological adaptation is how that they have their bone structure and the bone density. Well, Mr. Parrot on my head, it's good to have you here, and thank you so much for helping us once again. And last but not least, I would like to talk about the good old American grizzly bear. So, on your paper and your journal, please write down structure, behavior, and physiological, and one for each of the bear. Thank you so much. So that grizzly bear is something else, isn't it? Well, did you say that perhaps that its behavior is that it hibernates during the winter? Did you say that maybe a structure is how large and immense it is and how powerful its claws are? And physiologically, how does it help to be able to survive and reproduce? So before we close, I have one other question to ask you. Ask Professor Q. What about a camel and the hump on the camel's back? Is it made of water? What do you think? And what is its structure? What is its behavior? And what is its physiological adaptations? All right, so I'd like for you to go ahead, and that will be your opportunity to become a little bit more intelligent about the Animalia species. So thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you, Twinkles. She's almost sleeping. To be able to discuss adaptations. And remember, be strong and good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good gets better and the better gets best. What were we thinking, correct? So then what was the behavior? Well, the behavior is depending on the species, but they do like to herd, absolutely, as well. And they hunt all in different forms and fashions. And of course, they're physiological. Well, of course, with this particular area, the physiological would be that they do what?